Hey everyone, welcome back to another Nanmu Studios review. Today we'll be taking a look at Bastion, the Apatosaurus. I've been looking forward to this figure ever since it was announced, but I had a tough time getting my hands on it. Back when this came up for pre-order in July, I pre-ordered it from Big Bad Toy Store. It was supposed to ship at the end of August, then it got pushed to September, then to October, and then into November, and it looked like I was never going to get my hands on this. I know places like Dan's and Atlanta Time Shop sent theirs out to their customers months ago and people got them with no problems. So I actually contacted Dan at Dan's Dinosaur. He got one shipped to me. He said the shipping time was like a 1 to 2 month quote because it's coming from China, but I actually got this thing 2 weeks on the dot. So I'll definitely be ordering all my Nanmu products from Dan's from now on. And I even checked today on Big Bad Toy Store to see if this figure came into stock, and it still has not. It's still for pre-order, and we're almost at the end of November. So yeah, I'm definitely sticking with Dan's from now on when it comes to Nanmu. So I'll leave a link in the description to Dan's if you want to order any Nanmu figures from him. So moving on to the figure, before we take a closer look at it, let's go over the stuff that you get in the packaging. First up, just like most of the other Nammo figures, you get a little Jurassic World character. This one is an unpainted Dr. Wu, and then you get a nice full art picture of the Apatosaurus, which looks really, really good. And on the back, I have no clue what that says because that is in Chinese. Then you get a nice postcard with some beautiful artwork of Bastion on the front, and on the back there's some assembly instructions for the tail when this figure comes in the box. The tail is not attached, and all you really have to do is heat up this part right here, either with a hairdryer or running some hot water. Just make sure you dump out the water from the tail cavity. It is hollow, and just push really hard until you hear it click into place. And if the fit isn't super snug, you can use a little bit of glue along the seam right here to make sure this fits nice and flush. And moving on to the packaging itself, the packaging that Nammo ships their figures in is very similar to what you get from P&SO and Rebor. And this box is actually pretty big. I can't even get it fully into shot, but you got a nice black and white photo of the CGI render of the Apatosaurus on the front of the packaging. You got the Nanmu logo over here, and on the rest of the packaging, there's really not much except for the Nanmu logo on the other side. So that will do it for the packaging. Let's take a closer look at this beautiful figure. So moving on to this big, beautiful figure itself, this is the part of the review I would normally show a figure off on a turntable, but this figure is so long. It's actually longer than the width of my studio, and there's no way I could put it on a turntable. I actually tried, and it was met with disastrous results. So since we're talking about size, let's just do a couple of quick measurements. This figure is a whopping, I can barely reach the tip of the tail from here, 32 inches long from the tip of the head to the tip of that whip-like tail, and 6 inches on the dot to the top of the head. So in real life, Apatosaurus is between 69 and 75 feet long. So that put this figure somewhere in the 125 to the 130 scale range. So if you collect around 130 scale, this figure is going to look beautiful on your shelf. And seriously, the tail on this figure just keeps going on forever and ever. It just does not end, and I love how long the tail is on this figure. Very Apatosaur like to have a tail that long and whip-like. Now this figure is available in two different color schemes. This version right here is the red-brown version, and there's also a green-gray version. The red-brown one appealed to me more than the greener one, but having this model in hand, I have to say, I think I need both versions of this Apatosaur. I am that in love with it. I actually really enjoy the paint scheme on this version. It's pretty simple, but it's effective. You got some rusty brown stripes along the neck and forelimbs and going all the way down pretty much to the midpoint of the tail, and then you have some nice tan coloration mixed in to give it that bandit effect, and you have some nice wash over here to bring out all the folds and wrinkles along the side, and there's actually a nice dark wash along the top of this figure. You can actually make out the outline of the neck vertebrae, back vertebrae, and you got a nice row of spikes, osteoderms going down all the way to the tip of the tail. This is such a hard figure to review because it's so big to maneuver around the studio. Now, even though this figure is modeled after the Jurassic World Apatosaurus, it's still a very accurate sauropod figure. There's only two 2 things on here that aren't super accurate, but they're very, very minor. So let's pull this big boy in and take a look at some of the finer details, starting with this beautiful head sculpt. There's a lot of life in this head sculpt. I like how Nanmu did the eyes. The pupil is orange with a black pupil, and there's just a little bit of gloss coat to give it that wet look. The nostrils are sculpted towards the front of the snout, even though the nasal openings are up here on Apatosaurus. The most current reconstructions has the nasal passages near the snout. Now, one of the things that aren't super accurate on this figure is the width of the mouth. Usually on Apatosaurus skulls, the very few that we know of, it's kind of a little bit broader. This is a little bit more narrow and tapers off near the end, but that's a very, very minor complaint. I still think this is a beautiful looking Apatosaurus head. You get some fine scale detail on the head and going on to the top of the neck, and that's when the detail kind of fades. It's mostly just folds and wrinkles. Oh, my camera is not cooperating today. All the way down the neck and all the way down the rest of the body. And that's one of my complaints I have with sauropod figures from most companies. They kind of just sculpt them with this very elephant-like looking skin. And I really wish one day we'll get more sauropod figures with actual scale sculpted in. But the neck is beautifully done. It's very wide and thick, and you actually can almost see like each vertebrae like bulging through the muscle on this figure. Really, really cool looking touch, and I like that nice dark wash along the top of the figure to bring out all those folds and wrinkles. And you actually got a very tiny row of osteoderms that goes down the back, and they get a little bit larger when you get to the midpoint of the back, and then it goes into one row all the way down to the tip of the tail, and then going down to the very powerful looking front legs. The front legs are sculpted correctly. You only have one toe claw exposed. Now the only other tiny dumb minor complaint I have is, on most sauropod accurate reconstructions, the bottom of the feet are sculpted almost like a horseshoe shape, and they're not in this figure, but that's very minor. You can't notice if the figure is standing on all fours. And then going down to the hind legs, you can see a lot of nice muscle definition. This back foot looks like it's just about to lift off the ground to take another step forward. You have the three toe claws sculpted in there, which are accurate. These right here aren't toe claws, but they did add a little bit of black paint for some reason. Normally you will not see those when the animal was alive. And then turn it over, you get some really nice folds and wrinkles along the belly. Got a nice dark wash to bring out all that fine detail. Really lovely model. Now another thing is, when I actually got this figure is hollow vinyl. I almost expect this to be like solid plastic, but it's very light, and it kind of reminds you of the large hollow figures that P&SO produces. But you know what? I have to say, it probably kept the cost down going the hollow route. This figure retails like usually between like 80 and $100. I think if this was a solid material figure, this thing will probably cost at least 150 to $200. And then going down to the base of the tail, you have a nice wide muscular tail base, and the tail slowly tapers off to a very long and whip-like tail, and I love how long the tail is on this figure. This is really, really an impressive looking figure from all angles. Like even the way the neck is sculpted, the head is looking slightly to the side. Just gives this figure a very lifelike look. Absolutely, absolutely love this thing, except for my camera does not want to focus in on this. So let's move on with some comparisons. First up are some Apatosaur figures from other companies. First up is the OG Invicta Apatosaurus that has definitely seen some crap over the years. I think when I was a little kid, I actually kind of chewed on the head of this thing. You can barely make out the details on the head anymore on here, but man, this is a favorite toy from my childhood. And next up is the awesome Safari Limited Apatosaurus. And every time I bring this figure out, I always rave of how much I like this figure. I think it's an excellent Apatosaurus, but I like the head position on this Nanmu one. Most of these Apatosaur figures, the head's like positioned like almost periscoping, and I like how it's much more natural and almost parallel to the neck vertebrae. And then lastly for Apatosaurs, here it is with the Papo juvenile Apatosaurus that is facing the other way, but I think these two figures look absolutely fantastic next to each other. They have very similar paint schemes, and you can definitely use this Papa one as a juvenile, turn its head back to look at its mother. I think it would make an excellent diorama scene. And next up is a couple more sauropods. Here is the almost as long, if the tail was straight, Carnegie Collection Diplodocus, and obviously these two figures do not scale with each other, but they do look kind of cool next to each other. And lastly, for sauropod figures, here is the incredible Eofauna Allosaurus. And next up is the only other Nanmu figure I currently have. Here is their Allosaurus, and I think these two figures scale really, really well with each other. I am definitely becoming a huge fan of Nanmu. I actually pre-ordered their new Giganotosaurus, and I'm definitely going to be picking up more figures from this company. They are quickly becoming one of my favorites. And next up is the Rebor Stegosaurus, and these two figures scale really well with each other. And let's just keep the Morrison formation theme going. Here it is with the Rebor Ceratosaurus. I think all three of these look great, even when posed with the Nanmu Allosaurus. You can kind of have a very high-end Morrison formation group shot going. And next up is the GR Toys Spinosaurus, because who does not want to see a large Spinosaurus figure compared next to Apatosaurus? And I think these two scale pretty well with each other. And lastly, because it's a Jurassic World theme figure, here it is with big sexy Rexy. This is the Rebor Killer Queen Rex that is going to stand for the moment, and these two figures do scale pretty well with each other. And you know what? Why not? Why not? Because it's staring at me from the side. It looks like it wants to give me a hug. And here it is with the infamous Papo Giganotosaurus. So, final thoughts on this Apatosaurus figure from Nanmu. I absolutely love this thing. I love the size of it. I'm always a sucker for large dinosaur figures, and Apatosaurus is my favorite dinosaur of all time. So this is definitely one of my favorite figures in my collection currently. And even though it's based on the Jurassic World Apatosaurus, it's still a really, really good, scientifically accurate Apatosaurus figure. So if you're collecting scientifically accurate models, you may want to give this Nanmu one a look. And like I said at the beginning of the review, I ended up getting this figure from Dan's Dinosaur. You know, he quoted a 1 to 2 month shipping time. Got this thing in 2 weeks, so I could not be happier. I will definitely be going to Dan's from now on in the future for Nanmu figures. This figure retails for between, like, I think $80 and $100, and it's definitely worth that price point. Even though it's a hollow figure, it's a large and impressive figure. It'll definitely be a centerpiece in your collection. And I'll leave a link in the description to Dan's Dinosaur. And if you order anything from him, just put in the notes comment section of your order that you heard about him from Dino Scream. It will help out the channel a lot. So that will do it for the review. I just got my notification today that my Beast of the Mesozoic Wave 1 Ceratopsians have shipped, and I am so excited for that. So get ready this weekend. A lot of Ceratopsian reviews are coming your way, so that will do it. As always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription will help out the channel tremendously, and it's greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.